welcome to another edition of Maximum Growth Live. I'm one of your hosts, Jay Ruane, CEO of Firm Flex, your social media marketing agency for lawyers, as well as managing partner, I guess, for Ruane Attorneys, a civil rights and criminal defense firm here in Connecticut. With me, as always, is my man over there, down there in our nation's capital, Seth Price. Seth, the founder of Blue Shark Digital, your SEO for law firms, as well as managing partner of Price Benowitz, your DC, Maryland, Virginia, and Louisiana. I'm going to throw it out there. South Carolina, Louisiana, Iowa, California.
Although, you say that, but two things, the way that Google is moving with location-based pieces, it's almost incentivizing you to start doing that. And that,
absolutely.
And that one of the issues that inside baseball, I know most people in here don't care, but one of the issues that SEO companies are struggling with is when people started with exclusivity and said, I want exclusivity for a market, it was like, oh, well, it's the same as the TV market. But now the guy who's running in Connecticut says, oh, I want a Manhattan office. And the guy in Manhattan wants to have Jersey offices. And all of a sudden the maps start to blend and where offices are. So in one sense, they don't want you to have virtual offices because then this would become just silly. You'd call up Regis and have like 2,000 offices. But at the other time, it's becoming much more fluid as to what is a practice area that you cover.
Yeah, that's a topic we hadn't really put on our rundown, but let's talk about that. I'm in a situation where, we've got 6 established offices, and I'm thinking, you know what? It's probably not a bad idea, given everything that Google says, that I open 6 more this year. And now I gotta figure out, my resources of getting reviews for those offices, because then you're going to be splitting, right? I mean, even if I have 6 offices now, 12, right? I'm just going to take a for instance, but I still have the same number of clients. Now I'm diluting my review count across 12 things.
Right, that's the ugly. So yes, it's all like, oh yes, I should go up with these offices. Yes, great. And then you're like, oh yeah, but what about reviews? So
right.
That is the great thing. And I had a client early on who had about 5 offices. Well, that seemed like a lot to people, and they put the same review on all 5 offices. Boom, came down. So, like, can you add, is it, because look, it's not inconceivable that somebody goes to 2 different offices to work, but when you start getting abusive, also doubling your offices, well, you probably get away with it. You probably will. Like anything else, nothing that spikes, everything's got to seem natural. And that's, to me, if it goes along naturally and you can somehow motivate your team and your staff to get enough reviews, God bless it. It is what Google is pushing us to with this, December a local algorithm update.
So let's talk about this a little bit more, because it's intriguing to me. So, I am an established criminal firm in a major market in my state, right? I've got an established brand, thing, and but I'm in a city, and there's a lot of competition in the city. Is it smarter for me to pick the next big city that I do work in? I'm in Bridgeport, Connecticut, right? That's traditionally been our home base, right? The southwestern Connecticut, close to New York City. But the next biggest city, 25 minutes, 30 minutes away, is New Haven. I've never had a presence in New Haven. Should I be looking to put a presence in New Haven where a lot of other lawyers are? Or should I go to Hamden, which is a suburb community to New Haven, where there aren't as many lawyers? The rentals are cheaper. I mean, I could probably buy a office condo for $100,000. That's cheap, but I could buy something there, have the asset, rather than finding office space in New Haven, which would probably cost me, couple $1,000, probably $10,000, $12,000 a year, So these are all the considerations that we have to make. So what's the smart move? Is it go to the major center, go to the suburbs?
Right. So of course, the answer I'm going to give you is depends. But put that aside for a second. So I don't know how much we've talked about it on air, but like the proximity update, December, used to be that if you were the badass Jay Ruane, you put your stake somewhere, you could get a giant radius of influence. And what this proximity update says, you know what? If Jay Ruane is here, but there is a meager but significant competitor between you and the person searching, that person is going to get love and you won't if you're further away. How it assesses out how large the radius is going to end up being. Right now, the radius has shrunk, and that's hurt major players. So the first thing is thinking about where your quote unquote pin on the map is, your GMB address, and where the people searching are and how much. As Nalini always talks about, and she was a trooper, we'll talk about NTL in a minute, goes to NTL over 8 months pregnant, how'd they let her fly? I'm still not sure, but did a kick-ass job in the Sunday masterclass. You used to be able to say, where's pizza near me? Google is essentially saying they're getting rid of near me when you search for DUI attorney, for example, right? So all of a sudden, how we look at where search come from changes. Your question specifically, I almost say go big or go home, meaning if you're going into a major area with competition, with people with dozens or hundreds of reviews, are you going to make that effort? If you're going to make that effort, it's not just about buying, it's not just about renting the space, but are you going to find a space? Are you going to get reviews for it? Are you going to put the SEO effort behind that location so that Google sees this as a real thing? Because if you just put the pin on the map there, it's not going to do you a lot of good if they're established players with age, prominence, and reviews. However, if you do go to a place that you're buying your asset for cheap and there's not a lot of people, you could pick up geography. The question is, how many eyeballs will that pin on the map bring you? And that's why I said it depends. We are constantly looking at Blue Shark, looking at clients and saying, it's almost like Moneyball. Where do you get the most eyeballs for the least resources? And if everybody there has single digit reviews and there's decent population, that pin could get you ROI pretty quickly versus saying, you know what, this is my future, 2022, we're going to build this one out. And say, even though the guys there have 60, 80, and 90 reviews, we're going to have 100 reviews in the next 18 months and make a real push there. Fine, but you really need to allocate resources appropriately. And you realistically, as I say this, you can hear this, you can't do 6 of those in a year. Right. That's the issue. So when you say, I want to expand, do you want to make yourself feel good with a large number or with more that take less resources to effectuate?
Yeah, and it's a challenging idea because obviously we all want to grow, but when Google does something like their proximity update in December, it really sort of you and I had talked in October, November. What's our plan for 2022, right? And then December rolls out, and now things have to change. So, it's one of these things where you almost can't predict what is going to happen a year from now. You have to be doing it, 4-month chunks.
Ironically, Jay, this is something we've been preparing for a long time. This was why you've heard me for as long as we've been doing the show talk about the multi office strategy. Like we've seen this coming. So this was not one of these, oh my God, I can't believe it happened. This kind of made sense based on everything they've been pushing towards.
It's interesting. Speaking of reviews, just quick before we get to NTL. I had the opportunity to consult with an attorney for some special education stuff for one of my kids this week because we just had some questions and I know he's a leader in the space in the area. So I wanted to get some questions answered before we even approached the school and said, hey, we're thinking about this. What can we do? And his first question is, how do you get so many reviews? So obviously he's number one, he's following me. And number two, he's checking up regularly because he sees my review growth. And when I told him I have somebody whose sole job it is to get reviews and track my clients and make sure that they're done, and I got 5 new reviews yesterday for some closed cases, I realized, boy, that is a heck of an investment. If you can make that investment in somebody whose job it is to get you reviews, that is going to be money well spent right now.
Absolutely. We've had that, as trials and tribulations talked about on the show. We've had our intake group, CMT, we call it, do it. They get too busy as they grow. They forget about it. I just talked about this at NCL. We had a digital masterclass, and one of my sections that I spoke on was reviews. And I think one of the things, NCL, missed the Lowe's. The Lowe's is this amazing property in South Beach. They moved to the Fontainebleau, the iconic Miami location that my grandparents used to hang out at. I miss the South Beach and the way that conference and National Trial is one of my favorite of the year. What the smaller hotel, I think, makes it easier for little guys. When I showed up there, not knowing the scene 11, 12 years ago, whatever it was, in a small venue, everybody talks to you. The biggest players come over and you learn from these guys who have done amazing things. I spent a bunch of time with Chad Dudley, what he's done at Dudley DeBosier down in Baton Rouge, New Orleans, is just incredible. And you lose some of that when it's all over the place. So, but the digital masterclass was awesome. We had panels, we had stuff talking about reviews. One of the things, we talked about all the best practices, but it is sweat equity. And what my point is, if the owner of the firm, the managing partner, isn't on that, it's sort of like intake. If you ignore that, it's at your peril, because the odds of it being done right and consistently might be good for a couple of weeks, and then your person falls off their meds. And if I've seen anything, the people we've had doing reviews for us over time, there's a huge pop at the beginning, but there's a half-life of like 6 months of effort, 5-6 months. If you do that day in and day out, I almost feel like, you want the institutional knowledge of somebody to keep going, but I think there may be something where it's a 4-month, 5-month hire, and then you get the next person because there's a burnout from it. And we've seen that people start amazing, and then it falls. And to the final piece, even at Blue Shark, we're always looking at, like, is there a widget? And you see, there's no shortage of softwares where you put your information in and it texts and emails and does all that stuff. The problem we're seeing is that gets if you're lucky, a 2% yield. So unless with your ticket practice, great, but most people don't have that. So, okay, what do you do to get that up? And that is the human touch, which, I'll go full ADHD on you. Brian Benavidez, who ran Price Benowitz and the intake.
I was about to make that move. I was going to ask you about that.
So he's made the move, and we are very close. Sort of did a sort of a informational launch, or talk. Friends and family talking at NTL about Black Orchid Staffing Solutions and what the idea of training people intensely from overseas to do things. I think one of the verticals besides intake, that what we saw at NTL, that there's going to be huge interest on, is somebody that can help get reviews in. And while somebody cheap from the Philippines can make phone calls, there's a cringe factor, as my kids would say, that you really want. If somebody's going to be reaching out and asking for something that's pushing the envelope and deals with your firm brand and how people view you, making sure the person is well enough trained and embedded in your firm culture so that you're able to not have somebody call and say, why is this person bothering me? But rather somebody they want to leave a review for.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about NTL was that I saw Brian, his post on LinkedIn, that he was doing that. And one of the biggest challenges we had early on with having our review wrangler, we have a whole system for it, and you can find it in my Systemizing Your Law Firm for Growth Facebook group. If you want to have a job posting, I've got it there, very easy for you to be able to download that. But one of the things that was interesting about Brian and that whole thing is that I think it's really something that is missing in that overseas market is people coming in trained, because we had somebody trying to be our review wrangler first, the first person we hired, and typical in that situation when you're going randomly and picking people. We didn't know to train them on all the different names of the people in the office, because we're like, they're just going to be doing outbound stuff. But then they get on the phone with somebody and they want to talk about Emily, and they don't even know an Emily exists. And they can't say, "Oh, Emily is so sweet. I love her Southern accent." To the
so
person.
Funny, light bulb just went off. I'm thinking training about software. We're talking about getting Clio and FileVine and LeadDog and all these things. But it really that is a great point, especially as the firm gets larger. Like, frankly, when you start getting towards 100 employees, every once in a while, I pride myself on knowing everybody. Every once in a while, I'm like, who's that? And that's just, if I'm saying that, imagine somebody who's completely disassociated overseas. So they don't know every single person in the firm, but making sure the firm value proposition and unique selling proposition is clearly known, and who the team members are, so that, that was the great paralegal that helped them out.
Awesome. So what we're going to do right now, folks, is we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about NTL, as well as when to cut a potentially profitable business line. And that kind of rolls in with my recent need to restructure my firm and how that worked out over the last couple of weeks as we've let some people go, in some seats in my office. So why don't you sit tight, hang tight, come back in a few minutes, and we'll be right back with more Maximum Growth Live.
Hi, I'm Jay from FirmFlex, and I want to let you in on a foolproof way to drive viable clients to your door via social media, using a social funnel. You see, social media is a different type of marketing, and using the wrong methods won't land you clients. It will turn people off to your brand. But there's a way to get those clients to opt in, learn more about you, learn why you are great, and then want to contact you, whether you handle trust and estates, or family law, or personal injury, or any other type of law. And that's using a multiple stepped funnel that delivers the right message at the right time. You can get that message with a FirmFlex social funnel. A FirmFlex social funnel is the way to drive qualified leads into your client base. Our funnel program gives you the ultimate control over your new client funnel. We design, implement, and set up all the triggers for a multi-step funnel, bringing attention to your brand and slowly warming potential clients from cold to red hot and ready to engage. And the best part is, you can start the whole process right online. Visit getfirmflex.com today.
In this world today, if you want to grow your business, you want to grow your firm, you want to take on more cases and make a bigger impact, you have to have a digital blueprint. Statistically, throughout the time that we've been working with Blue Shark Digital, our law firm, the Atlanta Divorce Law Group, grew over 1,400%. They truly understand where we're headed and how we want to get there. I have a team in Blue Shark Digital that I feel like has my back.
And we're back. And folks, what I want to do right now is talk a little bit about changes in the office, because as you grow your firm, as you sort of, expand your operations, there's going to come a time where people come into your team and then leave your team. And it could be not necessarily, acrimonious when people leave. It could be, because you've outgrown their particular needs or their particular skill set. I remember, that Elon Musk story where his personal assistant he told his personal assistant to take a month off. And when that personal assistant came back, he let her go because he needed more. She was like, she could do everything.
I never liked that story. There's something in that whole story. Like there are people, we've seen people in the legal space write books and they tell stories, and I'm like, I don't buy that, but okay.
Okay. So anyway, in my own operation, in the last 10 days, we've had some turnover in that we've had two people exit our firm. And not, I don't even want to get into the whole dealing with all of the small smoldering fires that you see after somebody truly exits, that they had been able to keep a lid on, and they were not major problems, and then you've got to go in and sort of put out those fires. Because I've been dealing with that over the last 10 days. But one of the things that really came up that I hadn't really given much thought to, because as the owner, as the boss, you're always charging forward, is that there is definitely an impact on coworkers that you may not necessarily be aware of because of existing relationships between coworkers. And if you take one out of the mix,
there's a huge issue. And as I've grown and sort of thought, and now have two companies to, see this from, it is. And on the law firm side, I think that with rare exceptions, we've just, we've kicked the can too long on many things, but that, we've made those decisions generally is this person, performing and or a cancer, and made decisions solely on that. Something that I've seen David Brenton at Blue Shark do, again, non-law firms have many issues, but one of the issues they don't have is many of the law firm legacy issues. And so it's a younger, more homogeneous crowd generally, but that there have been many times when I saw somebody who was not performing by management's own explanation, and I was like, why don't we just get rid of them? And that the culture, the interpersonal workings don't always allow for that, which is such an incredible extra piece to the puzzle, which isn't just, is somebody performing? Do they have to come out that? And there are a lot of people in the business world that will tell you, just rip it out. And they, there is a school of thought for that, but that if everything is culture, and culture eats everything for breakfast, and all these catchphrases that are out there, which are true, is that there is a balance between making sure that you're not upsetting the internal apple cart. And we've seen stuff where there's a person, in one of the organizations that was really unstable, doing crazy off the chart, law enforcement should be notified type stuff. And that when the decision was made, there was still not a clear cut push this person out because of relationships with other people.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I had to have a conversation with a senior attorney in our office in the last week, who was very upset about a decision that we had made to let somebody go, and I don't know if this lawyer came to us saying, I wanna know your why. And that opens up a whole other area of,
Dan Schwartz will
employment
tell
law.
us, right?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Like, what can you say about
the book
or
will
what
tell
should
you.
you say?
No, understood. And look, how many times over your career have you terminated people? Hopefully not a lot. And the book, Dan Schwartz, our employment lawyer, friend of the show, comes on and will say, the answer is nothing. We're going in a different direction. And it can become, I've seen this where people get very, very upset, but that's the right way to do it. So that's with the person who may be terminated. Now the question is, how do you deal with the people around them?
Right. Like, how much do you let them know as to, the reasons behind it? And I have sort of a different approach than many when it comes to running my firm. I think of the firm itself as a living, breathing organism. And my job is to protect the organism and make sure that it continues to grow
That's not that far off with some of these great, Andrew Finkelstein's been on the show. I mean, he talks about having to fire, I forget if it was a daughter or a sister, but, bringing to the team. And if the team sees this person's pulling it down, then that family member was actually supportive of his decision. But no, you've gone even further over the years saying, hey, this is my kid's ability to eat. I don't quite, to me, there's a bigger picture piece, which is, I wish that it was just, is this human being performing and helping us build that organism? But as you just used that analogy, there are times, and it's maybe not a good analogy, because where if you take something out, it could have repercussions on other pieces of that organism.
Right.
Right. So it sucks because you want intuitively, you think cancer should just be removed immediately. But if there's other healthy parts, or if that cell was feeding energy, blood, whatever they follow the analogy you want, to other parts of that organism, and that comes out, you're getting rid of the cancer, but you also may be then hurting other parts of the organism.
Yeah, it reminds me, about a decade ago, I had a lawyer who had complained to me about the commute, because at that point, we weren't really a remote office, and I went out, I leased space 20 minutes from his house, and it was going to allow us to establish a beachhead in another area of the state, and he was all excited about that. And I said, look, we're going to get you set up, you're going to be all set. And then 2 weeks later, he gave his notice, and I'm like, dude, I just signed a year-long lease. And
so note to the viewers, I apologize for the awful analogy on the organism a minute ago, but I will tell you that one thing that could really action item that will help you, when I sign remote leases, I always have a clause that if that lawyer leaves the firm, the lease is null and void. So to me, I literally have this right now. I have a guy right now who wants me to sign a multi-year lease on a satellite office, have an amazing partner there, but I don't want to be in a position to be paying rent if that person leaves. And so we've actually now think of 3 leases, at least maybe 4, that I have where I'm not obligated. So, anyway, day late, dollar short.
I love that. I'm gonna get that language from you. And
there's no special language. It's like, Senora, exits. we're
At
out.
least
I
this,
mean,
oh, that's
it's
great stuff. That right there, folks. That right there is something that you should think about, because I've been on the tail end of some lease obligations that I really wish I wasn't on, and boy, that could have saved me some bucks a decade ago. And God, I think about all the money that I've lost over the years in just bad decisions and bad timing and that type
well,
of
but you're
thing.
always bad decisions. You make the best decision at the time,
Right. No,
and you
yeah,
do
but I
your
mean,
best. I
hindsight's
mean,
2020. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, boy, I wish if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have made
so
that decision.
so next week, I know we got to go, but next week I want to talk a little bit about practice areas. We talked about curtailing things during COVID. Less is more, and I want to talk about when is profitable not enough. When is it? Hey, I should be focusing and getting economies of scale in the areas that are getting traction. For me, I always, I like the example throwing spaghetti at the wall. You throw spaghetti at the wall, but once you see some sticks, but much more sticking over there, is it time for some consolidation?
Yeah, and I think that really comes down to sort of our own egos in that, I can't be a master of every type of case law, every type of case that could possibly come in. So let's talk about that. Let's dig deep into that, because I think, when we start to talk to people who've cut out practice areas, it may initially feel like you're losing something, but 18 months, 36 months down the line, you may feel that you've gained a lot more. And especially in our audience of people who are looking to, run it like a business so that they can exit or have the personal life that I want. I think that's a great conversation. Okay, folks, so that's going to do it for us this week here on Maximum Growth Live. Of course, if you want to catch up with us, you can catch up with us wherever podcasts are heard, on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts. I'm not going to talk about any other podcasting platform because that's all in the news right now. But if you want to catch up with us, you can take us on the go every week live here. You can watch us at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific on our Facebook pages, as well as streamed into many of the professional groups that lawyers have online on Facebook. One of the other things that you can do is you can catch up with Seth's Law Firm Insider, and that's on his YouTube channel. We didn't really talk about my YouTube, but for the people who don't know, I had gotten my channel suspended. I was 7.5 days later, I was able to get it restored, and now we've downloaded every single video that I've ever created, so I have that as a backup.
I hate to use this as this wrap up on a non, for the audience will not be as excited, but that breast cancer nonprofit, Facebook suspended, sent you a ping. Can you put your team on that and see if we can get those guys back?
Absolutely. Let me get on that. So, and then if you want to join my systems, if you want to know a little bit more about how to post a job for a review wrangler, is what we call it in our office. One of those job postings is actually in my Systemizing Your Law Firm for Growth Facebook group. So you can join the group. We're up to like 1,100 members in a year. Which is pretty impressive if you ask me. I'm posting stuff, and the Blue Shark team actually gave us a 4-part video series that's posting every day over the next 4 days about how to optimize your Google Business Profile listing, and how to set one up, optimize it, and then how to interpret the insights, which that's the last video that's coming. But man, that is some really good stuff, Seth. So kudos to your team who put that together. They did a kick-ass job. But for that, it was going to do it for us now. As always, tune in next week, and bye for now.